Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of AI Horizons with me, Jonathan Blaber, heading up the AI staffing practice at Eden Smith. We have today a returning guest, someone that I had to bring back. He put his life on the line with some predictions for 2025 and what AI will bring. So if you've already heard the episode with Eric Schwartz on season one. This is a follow on. So Eric, welcome back. Thanks so much for coming back and recapping.
Jonathan, hello, and thank you for having me back. It's I had such a great time the first time that I was here that when you said, "Hey, let's do this again," I couldn't resist. So I'm thrilled to be back on the show. I'm thrilled to be back on the potty with you, and yeah, excited to dive into a wonderful conversation today about AI and where things have gone since we spoke
Yeah,
last and where they're going to go.
crazy. Is pretty much exactly a year year to date that we spoke, and so much has evolved since we last spoke, which is crazy. And generally, looks like your predictions are pretty spot on, so I'm pretty impressed. But I'd love to obviously recap and find out, or dig a bit deeper on what we were discussing. So, the certainly one of your big predictions was around agentic AI. God, you were right there, wasn't you?
Yeah, yeah, no, that sounds like a great place for us to start. I think, and now in hindsight, looking at this list, I brought it up in front of me, and looking at this list of my predictions for 2025, it feels like I sandbagged it a little bit, right? I mean, these things were they said maybe they were obvious to me at the time, but yeah, you're right. I think the four things that I had on my list, and we'll get into each one of these one at a time, were one, agents, right? And we'll talk a bit about how far they've come and how far they still have yet to go. Two, we talked about we're creating this concept of enterprise AI, which is really about large organizations really adopting AI wholesale. The third prediction was about model specification, including bigger models and smaller models, and I think that's making great progress. And the fourth one, which unfortunately is actually starting to pan out a bit, just in a couple of recent announcements, is how jobs are changing and the roles of
Mm.
jobs. So yeah, so you started off with agents. Agents have grown tremendously over the course of this year. I think I don't think I can avoid a single day without having a conversation about an agent. Have you seen agents at all in your daily life, Jonathan?
Yes, yeah, we're seeing it. So not just from from a talent perspective, yes, there's huge increase now for agentic AI developers, business analysts, product managers going to kind of map out what the agents look like in terms of their responsibility, but certainly on a daily basis as well. We're just we're seeing a lot more interaction that isn't with humans as such. Which it's a different world, right? Certainly over this year, it's become a largely different world.
It's incredible. I think I sat down. I went to a workshop earlier this week, and literally in probably about an hour or two, the person that ran the workshop literally created a research engine from scratch. It's just that quick to be able to build these things and assemble these things to create these tasks. And let's think for a second, like what an agent is, and then we can talk about some of the manifestations that we see in the marketplace around agents right now. But an agent really is, it's not just sitting down with like ChatGPT and having a conversation. It's an agent is it's something where you give it a task, right? And it goes off and runs for a bit until it completes the task.
Mhm.
It doesn't just come back with an answer. It's not just a Q&A. It's not just an answer and a response. It's going off and doing some thinking, and it typically involves doing some thinking, trying some different strategies, using different tools like maybe a web browser or hooking up to a database, refining its approach, and then coming up with an answer. And so we're now seeing that as standardized behavior in a lot of the models. Claude, the big model from Anthropic, has a thinking mode. This is the first sort of agentic behavior that's out there. OpenAI, there's been a lot of controversy with ChatGPT 5. It defaults into it actually it comes into a space where it figures out what what your question is, what your problem is, and then sort of figures out what mode to use to solve it, whether it should be quick and just give you an answer, or whether it needs some deeper thinking or agentic processing. So it's trying to automate that decision process for you. And so those are some of the first things that are happening. We're seeing the rise of these agentic browsers everywhere. So Perplexity has a browser out there called Comet. OpenAI just released a browser a few weeks ago called Atlas. And this is the browser where you can give it a task and it pops up a little mouse and starts clicking around on the browser screen for you. It's like you say, tell it, I want to book a flight to New York in 3 weeks, and it takes over the mouse, it does some research, finds some websites to go look at, and you can see it sort of click and present a set of choices for you. And what this means is that I can sit here and be having a conversation with you, Jonathan, right? And and then this agent, this AI, is taking care of tasks for me on my behalf while I'm doing things. So suddenly I've doubled my capacity, right? Because I've got this automation running in the background. So those are just some of the examples that we're seeing around agents. We're seeing people are setting up replacing traditional IVR systems, their interactive voice systems that people used to, press 1 for accounting or press 2 for sales, right? Those things are now gone with like, hey, how are you, Eric? Thanks for calling today. How can I help you? Right? Like a really natural sounding
Yeah.
voice agent is on the other line, and it's
I
taking the
had a
first call, right?
yeah.
For companies right now. So agents are here, and they're manifesting themselves in lots of different really cool use cases.
Yeah, I had a really a really positive experience with a popular restaurant in London, and I had to change the booking from 2 people to 4 people at short notice. I rang up, and literally the voice is perfect. You feel like you're actually talking to a human, number one, and number two, it just got it. It just really understood what I wanted and got it completed. Email confirmation followed up. It was just such a smooth process. And I think every time I go to a restaurant, how busy are these, front of desk, staff? They always run off of their feet. So, little calls like that, I can imagine could be a massive disruption into their daily or their shift or whatever. So I really had a really positive experience, and I'm sure that the front office receptionist was also quite pleased, or was pleased that they didn't have to take that call. They was on the more important tasks. So I think it
Yeah.
works perfectly.
And I mean, how often, right? You call a restaurant and their staff isn't there yet. You wake up in the morning like, oh, I need to add someone else to my booking, or add someone else to my reservation, or you call in the middle of shift and it's just so noisy they can't hear.
Mm.
They're trying to focus on people that are walking in the front door, and they can't necessarily answer the phone. So it's an amazing use case, and I think we're going to see we'll continue to see the further utilization of these tools. So that was the first one. I think agents are here. The tools are maturing. The frameworks are maturing. There's still some growth that has to happen. But we're seeing a lot of this really start to accelerate.
Mm. Definitely, definitely. It's exciting. The next prediction from Mr. Schwartz was
The next
enterprise
prediction,
AI.
yeah,
Enterprise
exactly.
AI. And God, you got that one right as well, didn't you?
Yeah, yeah. It's this is really just talking about big companies saying, yeah, we're all in, we're moving forward, right? Um, and you can see the evidence. You can see the evidence in a massive way. Um, a large bank, was it JP Morgan, or was it no, it was what bank was it? It's skipping my head the details right now. But a large bank just came and said um, that they've invested over 2 billion in AI, into their operations, um, and um, and they've already gotten ROI from that investment.
Really? That's a
And
huge
it's
investment as well.
2 billion, right, that they've made into this investment. Interesting. I think was it. I'll have to find the details of that. The other use case that I love to talk about too, it was a story that I heard from IBM about a month or so ago. IBM, as you know, has been on a massive journey internally. And actually, I did put up a post on LinkedIn about this one a couple weeks back. And so people can follow up on that story or find that case study later if they want to. But IBM has been made this massive shift from international business machines to computers to services. And they took a real hard look at how did they become an AI first organization inside their company? And they went on a massive journey for a number of years and started to look at some of the areas in their organization where they were making an outrageous amount of spend. So HR, for example, was an incredibly expensive investment for an organization of 250,000 people. And they did some analysis and they looked at the vast majority of the questions that came into HR, and they realized that most of the questions that came in were really about sort of how do I find this policy? How do I fill out my timesheet? How do I,
Mhm.
what are my localized benefits, right? Like sort of these things that people you know, will ask over and over and over again, but can't really find in internets. And that's a whole nother topic why they can't find them. But but um but these were taking up real time from the HR professionals that really needed to sort out important things like hiring plans and thinking about succession plans and making sure that the business wasn't at risk for employees and making sure that they're compliant and sort of the things that HR really needs to do as a function. And so they deployed an internal bot at IBM, and it took upwards of 80 or 85% of the time that was freed back to the HR professionals so they could focus on task at hand, just answering these questions. Similarly, they applied the same methodology to their IT organization. They had an IT organization of over 40,000 people supporting a staff of 250,000. It's almost a 1 in 5 relationship between the number of IT professionals which required to support this massive workforce. And through the use of AI, through the use of automation and intelligent automation, they're able to reduce that staffing down to cut it in half. Which is if you think about it, right, that's a massive saving, especially for
Yeah.
expensive. You're in the recruiting space. You know how much it costs to hire and retain
Oh.
IT staff, and this was reduced by over 40%. So these are some of the examples that are coming through now that are showing how enterprise AI is really starting to take effect. We spent a lot of time this year debunking this article, this report that came out of MIT. I have to we would do ourselves a justice. We didn't talk about the MIT report that everyone was citing, and the headline that Forbes picked up, which was a bit of a misnomer, was that 95% of AI projects aren't returning any business value. But the subtext was, well, of those 95%, right? 100% of those weren't really trying to accrue any business value. They were really proof of concepts. They were pilots, right? They were like, hey, let's put this technology out and see what it costs. Let's see what it can do. Let's see how much it costs to run. And so even MIT came back and said, yeah, that was kind of a misleading headline, and we need to sort of correct this. And so I think the numbers are actually getting bigger. I think we're going to continue to see further growth and further deeper penetration into the enterprise with these technologies as people now start to get their heads around them.
Mm. Do you think we're now in a place where we can really track ROI?
Um, it's the answer. That's a great question, Jonathan. I think the use cases that we're seeing primarily are it's still in these operational, what I call the class of operational excellence or operational efficiency. And it takes a minute, right, to sort of to measure. So we have to let these things run over a couple of years to really track the ROI. What we do know is that we can contain the costs. We do know is
Mhm.
that we have. I mean, one of the big risks that we got into about a year ago was, oh my God, ChatGPT is so expensive, right? It costs all this money, and there's still risks, around data centers are being built, and these large multi-gigawatt data centers are out there, and so there is a cost for running these AIs. But for an organization, for an enterprise, we're at the point where now these things are starting to run long enough where we can start to see the impact. It's not immediately. It doesn't drop in, and we still haven't seen sort of the new growth yet, but we are starting to see efficiencies. So
Yeah, I mean, certainly I can see a lot of businesses really have changed from the last year where it was a lot of around FOMO, right? Are we going to miss out here if we don't go first? Now we're at a point where a lot of the industry leaders have stepped up and made that first move. So now it's businesses that are maybe mid market level that are now really trying to kind of up their game and compete with the guys that went first. But it certainly feels like the market is a lot more mature in terms of what businesses now know what is capable doing with AI. And maybe the risk factor is a little bit less because we've seen businesses now really kind of put their front foot forward and go for it. So it's a really different time. It's a great time for enterprise AI for sure.
yeah, no, 100%. And I think you're leading a little bit into the predictions, I think, for 2026. But you're right. Now it's starting to shift down market. It's going to start to shift down market because these techniques are going to be readily available. And just to confirm, I just want to circle back. It was J.P. Morgan Chase that did make that $2 billion investment on AI. It was last month, in October, where Jamie Dimon had said that the bank had spent about $2 billion on AI, and they've already seen that recruit. They recoup that cost, and so it's paid for itself. And that's just getting back to the baseline. So I think we're going to start seeing these investments start to multiply, and we'll get a scaling effect in 2026.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. 2026 is an interesting one. What are your thoughts? I know we'll probably talk a bit later in a bit more in depth, but certainly around enterprise AI. Have you got any thoughts there on what we can see for 2026?
There's a couple of things that are going to start to happen in 2026. Um, One, we're going to see the rise of autonomy. And by autonomy, we're already starting to see these incredible videos on the internet for robots, AI-based robots. The patterns that are coming, and the just the smoothness and the mobility of these robots, it's becoming incredible to watch. Videos are now surfacing even of today from Zhang Xpeng Labs, they're a Chinese automobile manufacturer, and there's a picture of a robot that is walking. It looks like it's doing sort of a catwalk. It's a robot that's got a uniquely feminine body shape. But I mean, it walks like a person. Like, you look at it and you rub your eyes and say, I cannot believe that there's not a person inside of a bodysuit, right? That's walking. And so we're going to see this rise of autonomy, and that's going to have a massive impact because now people are able to start to buy these home robots. A couple of weeks
Mhm.
ago, someone put a robot for sale, and it was $20,000 to buy a robot, or $500 a month, and it was a home robot that would be in your house and operating. Now, there was a bit of a caveat there in that it was teleoperated. I mean, someone would dial in and kind of control it remotely. So it wasn't fully autonomous yet. But these things are coming, right? We see Tesla now has got its fleet of robo taxis. It's starting to expand its coverage in Austin, Texas. So these are all use cases of robotics. We're seeing robotics now being deployed into factories. I think we'll continue to see this is going to grow at an incredible pace in 2026. And that's one level of autonomy. The second level of autonomy, though, however, is really how we're going to be able to start using agents and agentic technologies for our own personal productivity. And so here's something that I've been leaning into of late, which is really, and we can share it with the users. And I'm going to probably set up a couple more of these workshops in the future. But I've been teaching executives how to do vibe coding. Do you know what vibe coding is, Jonathan?
No. Can you explain?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a researcher, a pretty famous AI researcher. His name is Andrej Karpathy, and he's one of the guys that came up with some of the original with the original transformer architecture. Some of the leading research around the core models that are in OpenAI and in Twitter's Grok, and in the Gemini models from Google, as well as Claude Anthropic. And back in February of this year, he made the statement on Twitter. He said, "There's a new thing out there. It's called vibe coding." And he says, you know what vibe coding is for me is when you are, instead of running software, instead of leaning in and hunching over the keyboard and slamming away at keys to try to get the computer to do something, you sit back and you say, "Hey, computer, I want you to build this website for me. I want you to build a tool for me. I want you to capture something for me." You give it the instructions, you give it the parameters, and you say, "You know what? I trust you. Go ahead and automatically accept changes. Go ahead and automatically accept your code changes, and just keep running until the product is done." Right. So effectively, you're leaning back. You're giving instructions like you would like a junior developer or a development team. You're saying, "Go build this thing," and so you're sort of nudging it along. And you're reviewing its progress as it hits milestones, but it's building out digital solutions for you. Um, Vibe coding is, and so tools have started to emerge, and there are some popular tools called Cursor that developers are
Mhm.
using. There's even this thing called Claude Code from Anthropic, and Codex is another tool from OpenAI, and they're these desktop tools, right, that you can run. They actually run in a command prompt, like the old-fashioned like Unix DOS prompt that you have on your desktop, and you go and you give these tools instructions, and it starts building out all these digital software for you. And the hard part is connecting, like, how do you get it to focus and build a lovely and beautiful UI, and then how do you connect it to push it out so that people can see it on their computers or on their phones. And so I put together a process where I help executives get into a tool like Claude Code, which has got a really, it's, if you're a developer, you can sort of figure it out on your own. It's sort of standard practice. You've been figuring these things out for years. For an executive, this is completely foreign for them. So I've got a process where I can take an executive, I can get them into a tool like Claude Code, I can hook it up so that they can push it out to a production site, and they're able to build end to end. They're able to take their intellectual property, their business expertise, and they're able to capture it and just talk to an AI and have it build out what they want. And they can iterate on it. And so by connecting the dots, they're now free to just have a conversation with this AI agent that's now solving problems for them. And so that's vibe coding. And so I did one session in London back in October. I've got another one coming up in December. And they're filling out, and people are just raving because they didn't think they could possibly do this before. And this is creating a whole nother way of people to not just create a Word document, not create a PowerPoint, but we're actually creating digital interactive solutions that are at a point where they're effectively investor ready. I had someone come to one of my sessions last month, and he had this deep domain expertise, and he wanted, he sold his last company, wanted to pivot into a new venture, and literally in a day, he had a proof of concept, he had a prototype that was pitch perfect and investor ready, that you could show an investor and say, "Here's the idea. I now need some funding to go build this for real. Help me invest," which just will massively unlock innovation and acceleration at both the corporate level, right, where teams are struggling to innovate, as well as the individual entrepreneur level, where people with deep domain expertise can now take their ideas all the way to cycle. A cost of building a prototype like that would cost you at least 25K, if not 50K, to build something that's investor ready. And now they can do it in a day for under 100 pounds.
That is crazy.
But think
How
about the force
how
multiplier that is, right?
it's just absolutely crazy how you can just do all of that in one day. Investors must be licking their lips. They must be getting pitched, day in, day out. These innovative entrepreneurs must be licking their lips and just thinking, right, we can really ramp up some of our ideas quickly and cheaply. That is just crazy.
It's absolutely a force multiplier. It absolutely unlocks a ton of latent value. This is weeks and weeks, if not months of work. You get something to a place where it's pitch perfect, and now you can do it yourself in a day. And that's just one aspect. And once you start thinking about doing things this way, you can write up documentation. You can write up. You can craft almost anything in this methodology. Once you start to take that mindset shift.
That must be music to a lot of people's ears for sure. On the speed and the cost, which which are the two buying motives for sure for anyone, right? How quickly is it going to take, and how much is it going to cost me?
Yeah. No.
So for sure, and we also touched on around models and model specialization. You made some pretty relevant, and again, you was on point again with what you were saying on the last show. So, what have we seen with model specialization, Eric?
Yeah, I think it's gone further. There are a couple of elements of model specialization that we were talking about. I think it's refined quite a bit. You were starting to see now, and I think I was right about it, that Claude and Grok, and even OpenAI are starting to develop personalities. There was a lot of tension that happened over the course of the year when OpenAI released um, GPT-5, which is their new version of their Chat GPT product. And they took off of market a product that was called 4.0. They had a very funky naming scheme for a while this year. But they had a product called 4.0 that they took off and they replaced it with 5, and which seems sort of makes sense because 5 is typically bigger than 4. But one of the things that 4.0 did was that 4.0 was incredibly empathetic, and people started building these close sort of personal relationships with this model. And when it went away, they felt like they lost a friend, right? They felt like they lost a loved one, right? And there was an outrage, right, that this model had gone away, and sort of all this time that I'd spent getting to know it and getting to know me was replaced with something a bit more robotic and something a bit more a lot less empathetic, right? And so
Yes.
we see Grok getting a bit unhinged. Like you can kind of ask it to do anything, and it sort of will. Claude, on the other hand, will it'll say, yeah, let me stay a little bit more respectable and sort of stay in my swim lanes a bit better. And so you're really seeing that like we're seeing the personalities emerge. And Google's making some great strides with their Gemini project. They've kind of come, they kind of had a couple of fits and starts with Bard, and Bard has sort of disappeared, and now it's Gemini, and now it's sort of becoming a little bit clear how Google's going to interact with or bring products in this space. And so they've launched a vibe coding portal. They're bringing it together in a cohesive way. And I think their models are, we're seeing their models show up in Google.com and a lot of the Google tools like Maps and a number of these things are really starting to now be powered by Gemini. In fact, there was a big announcement that has happened the last couple of days that Apple's going to be spending over $1 billion a year paying to use Gemini, the Google model, to replace Siri. And so all the Apple fans will say, "Thank God, finally, Siri hasn't had a significant facelift in quite a few in 10 years maybe, right? It feels like it's been such a long time that's been static. But you think about the model that's changed, right? The way Google used to pay Apple 25 billion a year to make sure that Apple's iPhone used Google as its default search engine. So Google would pay Apple. Now they've switched the model around so that Apple's now paying Google
Yeah.
to use Gemini at $1 billion a year. So we're seeing the economics of this starting to shift as we move from these deterministic systems now to what we call a stochastic or non-deterministic system to power these experiences. So
Steve,
so
Steve,
I
what's
mean,
Steve Jobs thinking?
look how
You
good
know,
image creation's got, right? Image creation's got absolutely extraordinary. Midjourney continues to be the creme of the creme of tools that are out there for you to use. And if you're an artist or a photographer, or if you can describe how an artistic scene would get put together, Midjourney is still the ultimate tool for creating images. But you can do a pretty good job with Grok. You can do a pretty good job with OpenAI's tool. Everyone was very excited about Sora 2 for creating videos. Gemini launched the Gemini VO model, which allows you to create, like these Vine-like videos, 7 to 8 second long videos. A little tool they call Nano Banana for creating these incredibly lifelike and still images. And so this whole idea of being able to, in fact, create images and music and videos has gotten so good. We love to kind of look at the evolution of the Will Smith eating spaghetti video, and how just 2 years ago, right? It was sloppy. You could sort of see like the artifacts of an AI sort of falling apart. It wasn't believable at all. And now you see the creations of these latest models, and it looks like someone naturally eating spaghetti, and it's quite incredible. In fact, the final bit is that the sound creating models, some of these sound tools, Udio and Sumo, where some of these people were creating AI audio sounds and pushing them right into Spotify, and those have gotten so good that they've now been shut down and sued by the major music producers, because the quality is getting so good that they're really competing with traditional music generation. These specialized models are creating these interactive multimedia assets. I've got really, really, really good.
really good. And that's that you can just see how advanced this has come just from speaking to you over a year ago. And it really begs the question, what's it gonna look like in a year's time with these models and what their capabilities? Because they're already looking pretty incredible. Can they get even better?
Yeah, so what we're going to see over the next 1 to 2 years, and I think people are being a bit cautious now with their predictions, but I think every time that we make, I've made a prediction around AI, I've been off by twice as long. So we'll see how quickly these things happen. But one, this notion of autonomy will happen. Things will be running on your behalf. Like literally, while I'm sitting here having a conversation with you, I've got one agent working on a project for somebody to fix up, to write some new code, to write a new dashboard. Got another agent working on some bugs in a data set, and cleaning up some data. I got a third agent helping me write a requirements document. So I've got all this work that's happening in the background. My team, right, is working for me in the background, while you and I are having this conversation. And then every once in a while, I'll check in with them and sort of nudge it along and say, yep, keep going, or go this way, or steer that way, or yep, you need to do this over again, or just replace this with that. And that's happening. So I'm out there, building these things for clients, and working with clients to help them learn. And I'm teaching people how to do this vibe coding. So they're now up there and learning how to use these tools themselves. So we'll see that happen. But we're also going to see these agents even get better. And one of there's two big things that are missing in the AI market space right now around to get to like full level autonomy. And one is on this notion of memory. And so when you type something into ChatGPT, or you type something into Claude, it seems to remember things, but it does it in a kind of a hacky way. It takes these memories, or takes these interactivities, and takes a quick summary, maybe 1 or 2 sentences, and it stores it in a local file. And then every time you sort of open up that conversation with ChatGPT, it loads up that file again and says, "Oh yeah, remember all these things about Eric or Jonathan, right?" So that's how it's doing it today. what we talk about memory when we talk about with AI is that these memories are going to start to go into the training of the model itself. So instead of it just being a file that's loaded when you talk to it, it actually gets put into the code that's inside of the model. That's going to start coming, and I think it's tricky because you want to make sure that the training that goes into it, the facts that go into it, the knowledge that goes into it doesn't get hampered or biased in any way. Yet there's a layer where it's actually starting to add maybe it's your personal writing style, maybe it's your personal preferences, maybe it's things about um, uh, uh, maybe it's the domain that you work in where you have expertise. It's going to start to learn these things. The models are getting smaller and smaller. So this is gonna create a space where organizations will start to be able to run their own models, right? Be able to train their own models, and they'll be able to do it much more affordably. So instead of having these massive models that run over dozens of, if not hundreds of data centers, we'll be able to have our own models, and there are new techniques that are coming out that are able to train the models so that they're providing in unique domains. They're providing answers and providing responses at the equivalent level of the large models, and so that's also happening. So we have autonomy. We have this notion of these models sort of evolving, and then the final thing that's sort of missing, right, is that right now when you talk to an AI, it only does something for you when you ask it to do something, right? It only responds to your prompt, as it were, right? You have to ask it a question, and then it comes back and responds. Soon, these things will be able to listen to external stimuli, whether it be the weather, whether it be temperature in your house, whether it be the stock market, whether it be an email that comes in, right? Any number of these sort of signals that sort of come all over the place, and then be able to respond proactively. And so it's that combination of memory and proactive response that's going to start to create this real level of autonomy. A robot that walks around your house, right, is already doing this. It's interacting with real world stimuli to be able to respond and react in the right way. So that's what we're seeing. And then
Yeah,
so those are some of
the
the big things that
robots
are
are
happening for next year.
the robots are particularly weird. I mean, I don't know. Did you see the SAP dog at BDL?
Mhm.
Um, like
And
it's creepy.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
so. I mean, technology, it's advanced. What it can do, amazing. But it just creeps me out.
Yeah, yeah. Then that one was fully teleoperated, right? There was the girls were walking behind it, and they had a remote controller, right, that they were using to steer it around. But it was so that's an example of teleop. But pretty soon it's just going to be able to walk around the show floor at an event like Big Data London, where it just walks around and talks to people, right, and just interacts and sort of looks at them and says, "Oh, you know, how can I help you?"
That particular dog. I mean, yeah, I had a good chat with the operator, and obviously its capabilities are very advanced, but the creation of the dog isn't to be a pet. It was going into emergency situations. So there's like a huge gas leak. Rather than sending in a human into potentially life-threatening situation, the dog will go in. It's got its sensors, etc. So it was really really cool concepts. It just creeped me out a little bit. The way it was walking around, and he's just. I guess this is potentially in a few years' time will be the norm. I don't
Yeah,
know, but
yeah. It's just
you know,
we've always sort of had there's the term, right? It walks robotically, right? We use that as part of our language, something that's sort of stiff and not coordinated. These systems are now becoming so
absolutely.
smooth, right? The Xpeng robot that I spoke about earlier in our chat, is this female-looking robot that literally, it walks down the runway, right?
Yeah.
And sways, right? Like a female body would, like a human body would. Um, we think about these moon bases and Mars bases and extra planet colonization. I mean, one of the biggest barriers for planet colonization over the last 40, 50 years is that we'd have to send humans up there to do that. And it's super risky because it's just, human life is quite fragile and quite brittle. But now we're going to be able to send, we're going to be able to pack up one of Elon Musk's robot rockets with hundreds of robots, drop them on the planet, and let them go to town, or start building a facility that's human safe, right? And that can go on for years, right?
Mm.
So, they're talking about building a moon base where they could run a quantum computer on the dark side of the moon, right? That's it's already got the environmental capabilities that you want. It's cold, it's dark, and it's free from like earthquakes and storms and things like that. All that lives in the dark side of the moon. So why not build a moon base with a quantum computer there? Google
Mm.
just last week has announced that they're going to build a data center in outer space. And they're going to push up a bunch of satellites that's up in space, and they'll all communicate as a satellite network, much like Elon Musk's Starlink system. And the data center will live up there, and it'll get its energy from the sun directly. So any
Mm.
power that it needs will come from the sun. The cooling will come from the environmental space in outer space, and it'll just send data down through a microwave channel. And so suddenly we're having these moon shots or space shots are now becoming sort of reality. China has said that they're going to put up a massive solar collector in a geostationary orbit to capture sun's rays and send power back down to the Earth. And it'll be in a geostationary place that will never block the sun's rays back to the Earth. And so power capture can now start to happen in outer space. And so these are, I mean, these may not happen next year, but I think by the time 2030 comes, over the next 5 years, some of these projects will actually start to materialize.
That is so fascinating, isn't it? And it's great for energy. That's certainly one of my interests, concerns with all around these data centers. It is the energy consumption because it is scarily quite high.
Yeah.
But I know that a lot of businesses, industry that are looking to kind of get that consumption down. I had uh, Elizabeth Foster on, who's really, really passionate around frugal AI, which is a very efficient way of running AI agents without costing the planet huge amounts on energy consumption. So yeah, lots of practical things that are happening. It's exciting. I never knew about the moon, the moon idea, which is really, really cool. I know we're running out of time a little bit, Eric, but I think just one of the last kind of predictions you made for 2025 was the job market, which obviously is very close to my heart.
Uh,
Um, not only from a professional point of view, but I've also got nieces that are looking to kind of get into the professional world. Where do they go? So what have you seen, particularly around the job market? New skills, new roles, that kind of thing.
um, yeah, I mean, I think the job market's still in this upheaval. We just saw Amazon, for example, made 30,000 roles redundant just a few weeks ago. Um, so I still think we're seeing a lot of stagnation. Like roles aren't being created. People are now able to do more with these tools, but there's still a lot of upskilling that has to happen. And so, I talked about this vibe coding thing, the workshops that I'm doing for execs. I'm also now taking this into a place where we'll go into an organization and help teams understand how they can do innovation using these tools. Not that they're building production code, not that they're going to be shipping things into their production data centers, but they have these tools at hand that they can run independently with. Um, and so uh, so jobs are evolving. People are developing new skills. These tools, as we mentioned earlier, things that are having a great effect on large organizations where they can afford to spend billions, these are now going to continue to shift down markets. So smaller organizations, family businesses, 20-person businesses, small and medium businesses inside the organization, inside of inside of the country rather, that are doing things heavily manually, cutting and pasting from their CRMs into their to their project management tools, into their invoicing tools, into their financing tools. They're just doing, people are just spending days and days and days, hours and hours and hours per day manually cutting and pasting and moving data around. This is all going to get solved very quickly. We're going to start to enable organizations to take advantage of this automation and really start to recoup the benefit of that, where these people that know their business inside and out could spend, could stop spending all their time doing this grunt work, as it were, and really start to come up with new innovative ideas to help move their business along. And so that suddenly means that a team of 5 can now compete with a team of 50 when they're all trained, right? And so we're going to have this massive force multiplier. And so I think jobs will change. I think the corporate structures will change. We no longer need these massive. You think about the size of an enterprise, right, and the cost of an enterprise. I mean, it's got to create. It requires a ton of capital to get going and keep going, and that's a lot of cost. Look at the administrative overhead of a large organization. Is that really necessary to deliver? Now, for certain industries, of course, it will be. But for a lot of other industries, like service industries, for example, why not bring together a handful of experts to solve a problem with a very loose structure without all this corporate overhead? So I think there's some new ways that we can start to define how business gets done and how solutions get solved. That's what we're going to start to see next year.
Definitely. I had a really impactful quote a few weeks ago, which was, AI is not going to take your job, but if you're not using AI to assist your job, then yes, you may fear losing that, because the new world of roles, skills will be, to be super productive, you need to use these AI tools. And if you're not using them, you're just going to fall behind.
Right.
Yeah, it was a really kind of, interesting concept there to look at AI as your buddy, not your worst enemy, for sure.
Yeah,
But,
exactly. Use it as a teammate, right? Coach it, work with it. Think about it as a member of the team, not someone that's there to steal your job. So.
Exactly. So, look, Eric, I know we've taken up a lot of your time, and I'm so grateful you've come back to share your wisdom again. You were spot on your predictions. I'm certain you're going to be spot on with your predictions for 2026. And look, as soon as I see that moon base as well, I'm gonna be like, right, okay, you heard it here first. Eric Schwartz, AI Horizons. We called it. So I'll take some glory out of that.
Yeah. I think the future is quite bright. There's some really interesting things that are coming, and still some problems we're going to solve. But I think it's really positive when we look at the outlook in the right way, and we think about how we can leverage these technologies and leverage these capabilities to help us out. So, Jonathan, it was a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me on again. Really enjoyed the conversation. I can't believe that the time went by, but it was lovely to chat with you again today.
Always.
Speak again soon.
Wishing you the best of luck as well. All right. Thanks very much for joining.